The hall was buzzing with excitement, the kind that comes when people know they are about to witness something special. The chandeliers above sparkled softly, casting gentle light over the rows of seats filled with expectant faces. Children fidgeted in their seats, and elderly couples whispered quietly, sharing memories of concerts they had attended long ago. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old books, a comforting scent that somehow made everyone feel closer together. At the center of the room stood the grand piano, its black surface gleaming under the warm lights. It was the kind of instrument that seemed alive, waiting for hands skilled enough to wake its voice. Tonight, it would be the stage for an unforgettable moment. The pianist, a man well known for his brilliance and charm, moved with quiet confidence toward the piano. He had performed on stages around the world, his fingers dancing across keys with a grace that left audiences breathless. Yet tonight, he was not here only to play. He was also here to share a few stories, to laugh with the crowd, and to bring a spark of joy into the ordinary lives of people who had taken time out of their busy days to sit in this warm, glowing hall. His eyes scanned the audience, playful light in them, as he began to speak about the pieces he loved, the moments of inspiration behind his music, and the many adventures that had brought him to this very stage. The crowd listened with rapt attention. Every word he spoke carried a weight of experience, a quiet humility, and a touch of humor. He made them laugh with stories of mistakes he had made in his early years, the times when he had stumbled through difficult pieces and wondered if he would ever succeed. His laugh was easy and genuine, and it spread through the room, loosening the tension in the shoulders of every listener. People leaned in a little closer, feeling as though they were part of a conversation meant only for them, not just observers of a distant performance. As he finished one story, he looked toward the audience, his expression shifting into something more mischievous. He bent slightly toward the microphone and said, "You know, sometimes the best music isn't played by someone famous. Sometimes the most beautiful melodies come from the most unexpected places." There was a pause, and the audience murmured among themselves, curious about what he might mean. He smiled and gestured toward the crowd. "Who here wants to play for us tonight?" A ripple of laughter moved through the audience. Some people clapped, others leaned back, unsure if he was serious. Then, almost instinctively, his eyes settled on a woman sitting quietly in the second row. She was dressed simply, in muted colors, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She seemed smaller than the others in the room, as if she were trying not to be noticed. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and her eyes, when he caught them, held a gentle, quiet curiosity. Without thinking, he called her name and asked, with a playful bow, if she would like to come up and try the piano. The crowd chuckled softly, expecting a polite refusal. But the woman hesitated only a moment before standing. Her movements were slow and careful, almost shy. As she walked toward the stage, a few people whispered to each other, wondering if she had any experience at all. The pianist leaned back on the bench, watching her approach, his eyes twinkling with amusement. He did not expect what was about to happen. When she reached the piano, she paused for a moment, her fingers hovering just above the keys. The pianist helped her onto the bench with a polite nod, his smile still playful. "Do you know how to play anything?" he asked softly, not mocking, just curious. She nodded, her hands trembling slightly as they rested on the keys. The audience leaned in, sensing that something unusual was about to unfold. The hall grew quiet, the usual murmurs fading into silence. Even the soft rustle of clothing seemed louder now, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Her fingers moved tentatively at first, pressing the keys with gentle care. The sound that emerged was soft, almost fragile, like the first rays of sunlight slipping through a window. It was not a confident, showy start, but something more honest and delicate. The pianist watched closely, his initial amusement giving way to intrigue. The audience shifted in their seats, listening more intently, feeling the shift in the atmosphere. There was something in the simplicity of the notes that made hearts lean forward, waiting for the story hidden in the music dot. As she continued, the melody grew in richness. Each note seemed to flow naturally into the next, creating a tapestry of sound that was gentle yet powerful. Her hands moved with surprising ease, her fingers finding the right keys as if they remembered a long-forgotten memory. The pianist's eyes widened slightly. He recognized the skill, the depth, and the emotion in her playing. This was not an amateur. This was someone who had lived with music, who had carried it quietly in her heart, waiting for the right moment to share it with the world. The crowd was captivated. People leaned forward, their faces softening as they listened. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, feeling emotions they could not put into words. Children stopped fidgeting, and elderly couples held hands tightly, moved by the unexpected beauty of what they were hearing. The woman's playing was not loud or showy, but it had a clarity and tenderness that reached straight to the soul. Each note carried a story, a memory, a quiet longing that spoke to every person in the room. The pianist leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. He did not speak, did not interfere. He let her play, letting the music take over the space. Even he, who had played on countless stages, felt the weight of the emotion in the room. It was rare to witness something so pure and unplanned, something that could stop a crowd in their tracks without a single dramatic flourish. This was not performance for applause. This was music born from life itself. Minutes passed, and the melody deepened. There was a rhythm in her hands that suggested practice, yet a freedom in her expression that made it feel spontaneous. Her eyes were sometimes closed, sometimes open, as if she were both inside her own world and aware of the people watching her. The hall was silent, except for the piano's voice, carrying gentle waves of sound that touched every listener in a personal way. The air seemed heavier, richer, charged with a shared human experience that had nothing to do with fame or reputation. It was just a person, a piano, and the pure act of creating something beautiful. As the final notes lingered in the air, the woman's hands rested lightly on the keys. There was a hush, a collective intake of breath. The audience was stunned, not expecting such depth from someone they had assumed was merely a volunteer. Even the pianist, usually quick with applause and laughter, sat quietly, absorbing the impact of what had just happened. His playful smile had softened into something genuine, almost reverent. The quiet was almost sacred, as if the room itself were honoring the courage and talent that had just been revealed. Then, slowly, a few hands began to clap. The sound was cautious at first, as people processed the beauty of what they had just heard. Gradually, the clapping grew louder, spreading like a wave through the hall. People stood, some wiping tears from their eyes, all moved in ways they had not anticipated. The pianist stood beside her, clapping as well, a look of genuine respect on his face. He leaned down slightly and whispered, "That was incredible. Thank you for sharing that with us." The woman smiled softly, a little overwhelmed, a little shy. She nodded, acknowledging the applause, but not letting it change her calm demeanor. The audience continued to cheer, some calling out words of encouragement and admiration. The room was alive with a warmth that comes from witnessing something rare and human, something that could not be predicted or controlled. It was a moment that would linger in their memories, long after they left the hall. As she stepped down from the bench, the pianist gestured toward her and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes the most extraordinary things come from the most unexpected places. Tonight, we have witnessed one of those moments." The crowd cheered again, the sound filling the hall with a sense of shared wonder and joy. The woman returned to her seat quietly, a small smile on her face, still absorbing the realization that she had touched so many hearts without planning to do so. She had not sought recognition, yet in a single performance, she had reminded everyone present of the simple power of music, courage, and the human spirit. The concert continued after that, but the memory of her melody stayed with everyone. Even the pianist, who had played countless pieces in his life, found himself thinking about the quiet, modest woman from the second row, and the music that had brought the crowd to tears. The moment was a reminder that talent and beauty can appear anywhere, often where we least expect it, and that sometimes the world's greatest music comes not from preparation or performance, but from a heart brave enough to share what it holds inside. The moment she returned to her seat, the audience's applause still echoed softly in the hall, blending with the subtle hum of excitement that filled the space. People exchanged looks of amazement, some whispering to each other about how unexpected the performance had been. It was rare, they said, to witness someone take a simple invitation and turn it into something so deeply moving. The woman, meanwhile, felt a strange mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. Her hands still tingled from the touch of the keys, and her heart beat faster than usual. She had never imagined standing in front of so many people, playing music that came from the depths of her memories and feelings. The piano had welcomed her, and she had poured herself into it, unafraid of judgment, only to find herself unexpectedly seen and heard dot as the pianist began to play his next piece. She listened, quietly letting his fingers dance across the keys. His music was familiar to her, yet different now, somehow changed by the presence of her own performance lingering in the room. Each note he struck seemed to echo the courage she had summoned moments earlier. She noticed subtle glances from people around her, some still clapping softly for her, others with eyes that held new admiration. Even the children, who had been fidgety at the start, now watched the stage with wide eyes, trying to understand the quiet magic they had just witnessed. After a brief interlude, the pianist paused, placing his hands lightly on the keys, and addressed the audience again. "You never know where talent might be hiding," he said with a gentle smile. "Tonight, we learned something very important. Sometimes the most unexpected people can touch our hearts in ways we never thought possible. Let's celebrate that courage and that music." The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, louder than before, as though they were not only clapping for the music, but also for the bravery it had taken to play in front of so many strangers. Meanwhile, the woman remained seated, trying to calm the rapid beating of her heart. She glanced around the hall, noticing the faces of the people she had just affected. There were tears on the cheeks of strangers, smiles of astonishment, and the soft nods of people who clearly recognized the depth of her talent. It was overwhelming. Yet at the same time, she felt a quiet satisfaction, a sense of being connected to something larger than herself. For the first time in years, she felt her own music matter beyond the private spaces she had kept it in. After the pianist finished his piece, he walked over to her once again, offering a hand to help her back onto the stage. This time, there was no playful tone in his voice, only genuine respect. "Would you join me again?" he asked softly. "There is a piece I would like us to play together. It will be a duet, and I think the audience will love to hear it." The woman hesitated, uncertain, her hands still trembling slightly. But the warmth in his tone and the encouraging smiles from the audience gave her courage. She nodded and allowed him to lead her back to the bench. As she sat, he adjusted the sheet music gently and whispered a few instructions, not in a commanding way, but as if guiding a partner in a shared dance. The audience watched silently, sensing the unfolding intimacy of the moment. The woman took a deep breath, placing her fingers once more on the keys, and this time she felt a sense of purpose beyond just playing notes. The music was not only about performance, it was about sharing, connecting, and feeling the life in each sound. Their duet began softly, with the pianist's confident, flowing melodies blending with the woman's delicate and expressive touches. The contrast was striking. His experience met her quiet emotion, creating a balance that filled the hall with a richness of sound. The audience was mesmerized, many leaning forward in their seats, trying to catch every nuance of the unfolding performance. There was an energy in the room, an unspoken understanding that something extraordinary was happening before their eyes. As the music progressed, the woman found herself more and more immersed in the moment. Her confidence grew with each note, her fingers finding the keys instinctively. She began to anticipate the pianist's movements, adjusting her own playing to complement his. It was a dialogue, a conversation in sound rather than words. The hall seemed to breathe with them, each note a shared heartbeat, each pause a silent exchange of understanding. She realized that music was not just a private experience, but a bridge connecting people, allowing them to feel what others carried. Deep inside, the pianist occasionally glanced at her, giving small, reassuring smiles. There was no need for words. The music itself spoke. He marveled quietly at her talent and the emotion she brought to the performance. What had started as a playful challenge had become a shared journey, an unplanned collaboration that elevated both their playing. In this moment, the audience was not just listening. They were witnesses to the power of courage, practice, and unspoken vulnerability. The melody began to shift, growing more complex and layered. Their hands moved together in harmony, weaving intricate patterns that lifted the audience's hearts. Some people closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others watched, amazed at how two different styles merged seamlessly. The woman's playing was full of life, her emotions flowing freely, no longer restrained by fear or hesitation. The pianist's experience and finesse supported her, making it possible for both to shine. Together, they created something entirely new, something neither could have achieved alone. By the time they reached the final passage, the music had become a sweeping, emotional journey. Every note seemed to carry a story, and every chord resonated with a depth that left the audience almost breathless. When the last note lingered in the hall, there was a moment of complete silence. No one moved. No one clapped immediately. The quiet held a sense of reverence, as if the music had created a sacred space, even if only for a few fleeting seconds. Then the applause erupted. It started quietly, then grew into a wave of sound, filling the hall with warmth and admiration. People rose to their feet, some wiping tears from their eyes, others clapping so hard their hands ached. The woman smiled, her cheeks flushed, feeling a mixture of pride, relief, and humility. The pianist joined her, bowing together, sharing the recognition of a performance that had touched everyone present. The energy in the room was electric, a shared joy born from an unexpected act of courage and talent. Afterward, as the audience settled down, the pianist spoke again, this time turning his full attention to her. "You see," he said softly, "sometimes the most beautiful music comes from places we never expect. Tonight, you reminded us of that." She nodded, overwhelmed by the sincerity in his voice, and felt a quiet warmth spread through her chest. She had not intended to perform tonight, had not imagined that a simple joke would lead to such a powerful experience, yet here she was. Having shared something that mattered to so many. As the rest of the concert continued, she remained present but changed. She listened with new understanding, feeling a deep connection to the music and to the people around her. Even when the pianist played solo pieces, she could hear the echo of her own performance in the hall, a reminder that courage and expression could create ripples far beyond their origin. She realized that this moment was not just about music, but about human connection, about the way we can touch each other's lives when we dare to step forward. By the end of the night, the audience left with smiles and lingering emotions, carrying. With them, the memory of a performance that had begun as a playful joke and turned into something extraordinary. The woman, now calm and reflective, walked slowly out of the hall, feeling lighter and more open than she had in years. She had taken a risk, and in doing so, had reminded herself and everyone present of the quiet power that lies in unexpected acts of courage, in sharing what we hold inside, and in letting our hearts speak through our hands, through music, and through the simplest of gestures. She knew this was a night she would remember forever, a night when the piano, the pianist, and she herself had combined to create a moment of pure human connection that would linger in the hearts of everyone present. After the applause had settled, the woman returned to her seat, her hands still tingling from the piano keys. She felt a strange mixture of pride and humility. Pride because she had shared something deeply personal without fear, and humility because she realized how much she had been missing by keeping her music hidden for so long. The audience, too, was still buzzing with quiet excitement, talking softly among themselves about the courage it had taken and the beauty they had just witnessed. Even the pianist seemed to be reflecting on what had just occurred, his usual playful demeanor replaced with a thoughtful, almost awed expression. The rest of the concert continued, but the atmosphere had shifted. The audience was more attentive, more connected, not only to the music, but to each other. Conversations after pieces were subdued, filled with murmurs of appreciation rather than idle chatter. Every person seemed to carry with them a lingering emotion, a quiet recognition that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The woman, sitting among them, felt a connection she had not felt in years. She realized that her music had done more than entertain. It had touched hearts, reminded people of their own emotions, and created a shared moment of human understanding. As the pianist finished his next piece, he paused and turned to the audience. "Music has a way of reaching places words cannot," he said softly. "Tonight, we were reminded of that in the most unexpected way." He glanced at the woman, who met his gaze briefly, a small, nervous smile on her face. "And sometimes," he continued, "the most extraordinary things come from the most ordinary among us." The audience erupted into applause again, this time with a sense of wonder and respect, their cheers carrying a newfound depth of emotion. After the concert ended, the woman lingered in the hall, not wanting to leave too quickly. She walked slowly, taking in the polished wood of the floors, the soft glow of the chandeliers, and the quiet corners where people were still exchanging thoughts about the evening. She felt a sense of belonging she had not known in years, a connection not only to the music, but to the people who had shared in it with her. The pianist approached her once more, his presence calm and encouraging. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "Tonight, you reminded us all why music matters. It is not just about skill or performance. It is about honesty, courage, and the willingness to share what is in your heart." She nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had never thought of herself as a performer, and yet here she was, having moved a crowd simply by being herself and letting her music flow naturally. The pianist continued, "If you ever consider performing again, I would be honored to help you. The world deserves to hear your music." She smiled faintly, touched by his words, though she was still unsure if she was ready to take that step. For now, though, the experience itself was enough. She had faced her fear, and in doing so, had discovered a strength she had not known existed. In the following days, the memory of the performance stayed with her. She found herself practicing in the quiet of her home, exploring pieces she had not played in years, and experimenting with new melodies that had formed in her mind during the concert. The music seemed to flow more naturally now, infused with the energy of the audience's reaction and the sense of validation she had received. Every note reminded her of the courage it had taken to step onto the stage, and every pause carried the memory of the silence that had followed her playing. a silence filled with attention and emotion. Meanwhile, the pianist shared the story of the evening with colleagues and friends, praising the woman's talent and bravery. He described how a simple, playful challenge had revealed a musician who had once kept her gift hidden, and how her performance had touched everyone present. The story began to spread beyond the hall, inspiring others who had music hidden away in the corners of their lives. People reached out, sharing their own experiences of rediscovering a passion they had long neglected. In this way, the woman's courage rippled outward, creating a subtle but meaningful impact beyond the walls of the concert hall. For the woman, life slowly began to change. She started to reconnect with friends and family who had always encouraged her to play, but whom she had avoided due to self-doubt. She found herself smiling more often, feeling lighter and more alive. Her practice sessions became moments of joy rather than obligation, and she began to experiment with composing her own melodies, letting her emotions shape the music rather than following strict rules or techniques. Each note became an expression of her journey, a way to communicate feelings she had struggled to put into words. One afternoon, she received a call from the pianist. He wanted to meet and discuss the possibility of collaborating on a small recital, giving her an opportunity to perform in a safe and supportive environment. She felt a mix of excitement and nervousness, but agreed, trusting in his guidance and the encouragement she had felt from the audience. Over the next weeks, they worked together, selecting pieces that would showcase her strengths and exploring new interpretations of familiar works. Each rehearsal was a balance of mentorship and partnership, with the pianist offering insights while allowing her creative voice to shine. The experience of rehearsing and preparing for the recital further strengthened her confidence. She began to see herself not as someone who had once been shy or unsure, but as a musician capable of moving people with her music. The audience at the previous concert had reminded her that the true power of music lay not in perfection, but in honesty and emotional connection. She carried this understanding into every practice session, letting her hands and heart guide her fingers across the keys. On the day of the recital, she arrived at the hall early, taking a moment to sit quietly and gather her thoughts. The space felt different, now familiar, comforting, and yet still full of possibility. As people began to fill the seats, she felt a flutter of nerves, but also a steadying sense of purpose. She knew that the music she was about to play would carry not only her own emotions, but the shared energy of the audience, just as it had on that first night. The pianist offered a reassuring smile from across the stage, and she felt a sense of calm wash over her. When it was time to begin, she walked to the piano, her fingers lightly brushing the keys as she sat down. The first notes flowed naturally, carrying the honesty and depth she had discovered within herself. The audience listened intently, drawn into the story she was telling through her music. With each measure, she felt more confident, more in control, and yet more connected to the people around her. She realized that this was what she had been missing all along, the chance to share her gift openly, without fear, and to create moments of shared emotion with others. The recital unfolded beautifully, a mix of classical pieces and her own compositions. The pianist occasionally joined her for duets, their collaboration seamless and full of mutual respect. The audience responded with enthusiasm, some moved to tears, others clapping and smiling in delight. She noticed the same sense of connection she had felt during her first performance, the understanding that music could transcend words and touch hearts directly. It was a powerful reminder of why she had returned to the piano and why she had chosen to share her talent, no longer hiding it in the quiet corners of her life. By the end of the evening, the applause was overwhelming, a wave of appreciation that left her breathless and deeply fulfilled. She rose to take her bow, feeling a mixture of gratitude, relief, and joy. The pianist stood beside her, clapping and smiling, acknowledging her courage and growth. In that moment, she understood that the journey she had begun with a playful invitation had transformed her life in profound ways. She had rediscovered her music, her confidence, and her ability to connect with others through the universal language of sound. The experience had not only changed how she saw herself, but it also left a lasting impression on everyone who had listened, creating memories that would endure long after the final note faded. After the recital, the woman felt a quiet sense of accomplishment that she had never experienced before. The thrill of performing, the connection with the audience, and the joy of creating something beautiful with her own hands lingered in her mind like a warm, comforting light. She walked slowly through the hall as it emptied, the echoes of clapping and soft whispers still surrounding her. Every corner of the room seemed to hold the memory of her music. The lingering notes of melodies that had once lived only in her heart now carried in the hearts of dozens of strangers. She thought back to the first night, when she had been invited to play as a joke. At the time, she had felt a mixture of nerves and self-doubt, unsure of whether she even remembered how to perform. But the moment her fingers touched the keys, the world outside seemed to vanish, leaving only the music and the emotions that had always lived inside her. She realized that the piano had become a bridge, connecting her to the people around her in a way that words never could. It was both humbling and exhilarating to discover that her quiet, private talent could have such an impact. The pianist approached her after the hall had mostly cleared. He had a calm, thoughtful expression, different from the playful demeanor he usually displayed on stage. "You have a gift that goes beyond technique or practice," he said softly. "What you create when you let your emotions guide you is something rare. It's not just the notes. It's the honesty in every sound. That is what touches people." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. His words were not flattery but recognition, an acknowledgement of the courage and sincerity that had gone into every note she had played. For the next few weeks, she began to immerse herself in her music more fully. She returned to the piano each day, exploring pieces she had long forgotten and experimenting with new compositions of her own. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a source of expression, and a way to reconnect with herself. She found that each practice session brought not only improvement, but also healing. Music had always been part of her life, but now it had become a source of renewed purpose and joy. As she practiced, she also began to reflect on why she had stopped performing for so long. Fear and self-doubt had kept her silent, convincing her that her music would never matter to anyone else. But after that first unexpected performance, she realized that courage and honesty could outweigh fear, and that people could respond to emotion even more powerfully than to flawless technique. This realization gave her a sense of freedom she had not known for years. She began to see her music not as a private indulgence, but as a gift that could be shared, a way to touch lives and build connections. Word of her performance had begun to spread quietly through the community. Friends and acquaintances who had attended the recital shared their experience with others, describing the emotional power of her playing. Some reached out to her, expressing interest in hearing more of her music or learning about her journey. At first, she was hesitant to respond, still adjusting to the idea of being seen and appreciated. But slowly, she opened herself to the possibility of sharing her talent more widely, realizing that connection and impact were far more important than recognition or fame. One day, she received a letter from a local music organization. They had heard about her performance and invited her to participate in a small community concert, alongside other musicians who were passionate about sharing their music. The invitation felt both exciting and intimidating. She had never considered performing in a more public context, outside the supportive environment of the pianist's guidance. But she also recognized the opportunity to grow, to challenge herself, and to bring the joy of music to more people. After careful thought, she accepted, determined to approach it with honesty and openness. The weeks leading up to the community concert were filled with preparation and reflection. She selected pieces that reflected her own voice, blending classical works with original compositions that had emerged during our private practice sessions. Each piece was carefully chosen to convey emotion, tell a story, and resonate with the audience on a human level. She practiced diligently, but unlike in the past, she allowed herself to feel the music fully rather than focusing solely on technical perfection. This approach brought depth and authenticity to her playing, making her performances increasingly compelling and heartfelt. When the day of the concert arrived, she arrived at the venue early, taking time to walk through the empty hall and imagine the space filled with listeners. She felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but this time it was tempered by confidence and excitement. She had experienced the power of sharing her music once before, and she trusted that she could do it again. The pianist had offered to attend and provide support if needed, but she felt ready to face the audience on her own, to step fully into her own musical identity. As people began to fill the seats, she took a deep breath, centering herself in the quiet before the performance. The hall was smaller than the grand concert stage she had first played on, but that intimacy brought its own sense of connection. She could see the faces of the audience clearly, each person bringing their own expectations, memories, and emotions into the shared space. She realized that music was not just about playing notes. It was about listening, responding, and communicating across the invisible bridge that connects hearts. When the performance began, she let her fingers find the keys naturally, guided by the emotions that had always lived within her. The first notes were gentle, exploratory, as if testing the water, and then gradually the music blossomed. Her playing carried tenderness, passion, and sincerity, capturing the attention and hearts of everyone in the room. She noticed subtle reactions, the soft sway of a listener, a smile forming on a child's face, eyes closing in quiet reflection. These small, unspoken responses reinforced the impact of her music and encouraged her to play with even greater authenticity. As she progressed through her repertoire, she found herself more confident and expressive with each piece. Her emotions flowed freely through her playing, creating a sense of intimacy and connection that transcended words. The audience responded in kind, their attention unwavering, their reactions genuine and heartfelt. She felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she had not known before, a confirmation that the path she had chosen returning to music, embracing vulnerability, and sharing her talent was meaningful not only to her, but to those who listened. After the performance, the applause was warm and enthusiastic, and she received personal thanks and praise from members of the audience. They spoke of the honesty, depth, and emotional resonance of her music, expressing how much it had touched them. She felt gratitude, not just for their appreciation, but for the opportunity to experience and create a shared human moment. It reinforced the realization that music, when played from the heart, has the power to connect people, to evoke emotions, and to leave lasting memories. The concert marked a turning point in her journey. She began to see music as an integral part of her life once more, a source of expression, healing, and connection. She continued to practice daily, explore new compositions, and share her performances in a variety of settings, from intimate gatherings to larger audiences. Each performance became a chance to refine her craft, deepen her emotional expression, and continue the work of connecting with others through sound. She embraced her music as both a personal joy and a gift to the world, understanding that the act of sharing it carried significance beyond any audience or venue. Through these experiences, the woman grew not only as a musician, but as a person. She gained confidence, resilience, and a renewed sense of purpose. She discovered the courage to take risks, the patience to refine her skills, and the empathy to understand the impact of her art on others. Music had become a bridge between her inner world and the outer world, a way to communicate feelings that words could never capture. The journey that began with a playful invitation had evolved into a profound exploration of talent, courage, and human connection, shaping her life in ways she had never anticipated and leaving a lasting impression on everyone who experienced her music. The woman's life continued to change in ways she had never imagined. The success of the community concert gave her confidence to pursue music more actively. She began receiving invitations to play at small events, local schools, and cultural gatherings. Each opportunity was a chance to share her talent and to see firsthand how music could touch the hearts of strangers. She approached each performance with a mixture of excitement and quiet nervousness, remembering the first time she had played at the Grand Hall as a joke. That moment had ignited something inside her, and now she was determined to nurture it fully. During these performances, she discovered the power of small gestures and subtle expressions in connecting with an audience. She noticed how a slight change in tempo, the soft touch of a key, or a pause at the right moment could create profound emotional responses. People would lean in, close their eyes, or even whisper softly to themselves as the music unfolded. She realized that the magic of performance did not come from grandeur or dramatic showmanship, but from authenticity and emotional honesty. Each note she played was a bridge between her heart and the hearts of those listening. Her practice routine became more structured, yet more enjoyable. She devoted mornings to technical exercises, afternoons to exploring new pieces, and evenings to composing her own music. The compositions that emerged during these sessions were deeply personal, reflecting her journey, her emotions, and her memories. Some were joyful and light, others contemplative and melancholic. Each piece was a reflection of her inner life, shaped by experiences she had once kept hidden from the world. She found that composing allowed her to express feelings she could not convey in words, giving her music an intimacy that resonated deeply with her audiences. The pianist continued to support her growth, offering guidance when requested, but never imposing his own style. They would meet occasionally for duets or to discuss interpretation, improvisation, and performance techniques. These sessions became opportunities for learning, collaboration, and inspiration. The pianist admired her dedication and the depth of her musicality, often remarking on how her personal expression added something special to every piece. Their partnership was a balance of mentorship and friendship, each learning from the other in subtle ways. As her reputation grew, she faced new challenges. Performing in front of unfamiliar audiences brought fresh nerves and doubts. Sometimes she worried that she would not be able to convey the emotions she felt, or that her performance would fall flat. But she learned to embrace these moments, understanding that vulnerability was part of the process. Audiences responded not only to technical skill, but to the courage it took to express herself honestly. Each performance became a lesson in trusting her own instincts, trusting the music, and trusting the audience to receive her message with openness and empathy. In addition to public performances, she began giving informal music sessions for children and beginners. She discovered joy in teaching, helping others discover their own voices and express their emotions through sound. Watching a young student's face light up after successfully playing a melody reminded her of her own journey and the encouragement she had once received. Teaching reinforced her own understanding of music and deepened her appreciation for the shared human experience that art could create. One afternoon, she was invited to play at a small cultural festival. The stage was set outdoors, with sunlight streaming through the trees and the gentle hum of nature surrounding the performance space. The audience included families, artists, and local residents, all gathered to enjoy music and community. She felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, but reminded herself to focus on the emotions she wanted to convey. As she began to play, the notes flowed naturally, carrying warmth, hope, and reflection. People leaned in, some closing their eyes, others nodding along with subtle smiles. It was a different experience from the grand concert halls, but it was just as moving in its intimacy and shared humanity. During her performance, she noticed a little girl in the front row, completely absorbed in the music. The child's eyes sparkled with wonder, and she could see the same curiosity and excitement that she had once felt when first discovering the piano. After the recital, the girl approached her, shyly asking for a few tips on how to play certain notes. The woman knelt beside her, patiently demonstrating, encouraging the child to feel the music rather than just play the keys. This simple interaction reminded her of the power of music to inspire, connect, and pass down emotion from one generation to the next. It reinforced her belief that her role as a musician was not only to perform, but to guide and nurture others in their own journeys. Her growing confidence and visibility also brought new opportunities for collaboration. Other musicians reached out, interested in exploring duets or small ensemble pieces. She embraced these opportunities, finding joy in the exchange of ideas, techniques, and styles. Collaborating with others challenged her to listen, adapt, and communicate through music in ways she had not experienced before. Each rehearsal and performance strengthened her skills and broadened her perspective, showing her that music was not only a personal journey, but a shared adventure. Amid these developments, she also took time to reflect on her own emotions and growth. She realized how much she had changed since that first playful invitation to perform. Fear and self-doubt no longer dictated her actions. Instead, she found strength in vulnerability and authenticity. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward despite it. Every note she played, every composition she created, and every audience she touched reinforced this understanding, making her more resilient, empathetic, and self-assured. One evening, she received an invitation to a regional music competition. While she initially hesitated, worried about judgment or comparison, she decided to participate, viewing it as another opportunity to share her music and challenge herself. She prepared diligently, selecting pieces that highlighted her emotional expression rather than technical perfection. The day of the competition, she felt familiar butterflies in her stomach, but she reminded herself that the true purpose was connection, not accolades. When she began to play, the room fell silent, captivated by the sincerity and depth of her performance. Judges and audience members alike were visibly moved, and she left the stage with a sense of fulfillment that transcended any award. Over time, her journey continued to expand beyond personal performance. She began recording her compositions, sharing them online, and connecting with listeners from different regions. The responses she received were touching and often emotional, with many sharing how her music had provided comfort, inspiration, or a sense of connection during difficult times. She realized that the act of sharing her music had created a ripple effect, touching lives far beyond the immediate audience. The power of her art, once hidden, had grown into a source of encouragement and joy for countless people. Throughout these experiences, she remained grounded and focused on the human aspect of music. She remembered the first time she had played in the grand hall, the nervous excitement, and the way a simple act of courage had transformed her life. Each performance, teaching session, and collaboration reinforced the same principles. Honesty, emotion, and connection mattered more than perfection. And music was a tool to bring people together in shared experience. This philosophy guided her every step, shaping her not just as a musician, but as a person committed to the beauty and power of human expression. By the end of this phase of her journey, she had become not only a skilled performer, but also an empathetic teacher, an inspiring collaborator, and a storyteller through music. The playful invitation that had once seemed so insignificant had blossomed into a path of growth, discovery, and connection. She had faced fear, embraced vulnerability, and discovered the strength and beauty within herself. Her music continued to touch hearts, leaving an enduring impact on the people she encountered, and she knew that the journey was ongoing, filled with endless opportunities to create, share, and inspire. The final chapter of her journey unfolded in a way that felt both natural and extraordinary. She had grown into her role as a musician with confidence, humility, and a deep sense of purpose. Each performance she gave carried a depth of emotion that had been nurtured through experience, courage, and practice. Her life was no longer defined by fear or hesitation. Instead, it was guided by a desire to create, connect, and share music with the world. She had discovered that the true power of her talent lay not in recognition or technical skill alone, but in the authenticity she brought to every note. The woman's reputation continued to grow. Invitations arrived from various cultural institutions, local orchestras, and schools. People wanted her not only to perform, but also to speak about her journey, her challenges, and the courage it took to embrace her music openly. She shared her story honestly, describing how a simple, playful invitation had sparked a chain of events that transformed her life. Audiences were captivated not only by her music, but also by her words. Realizing that bravery and passion could change the course of one's life, she began to collaborate with other musicians more frequently, exploring new styles and compositions. These partnerships were opportunities to expand her musical vocabulary and deepen her understanding of emotion in performance. She learned to listen more attentively, to adapt, and to find harmony not only in sound, but in shared creative energy. Each collaboration was a conversation without words, an exchange of emotion that created music greater than the sum of its parts. The joy of these experiences strengthened her confidence and inspired her to continue growing. One particularly memorable performance took place at a local charity event. The room was filled with people from all walks of life, many of whom had faced hardships and challenges. She played with an awareness of the audience's journey, letting the melodies carry messages of hope, resilience, and connection. As she performed, she noticed subtle reactions, soft smiles, tears glistening in eyes, hands gently clapping in rhythm. The music seemed to wrap around the listeners, offering comfort and a sense of shared humanity. By the time the final note faded, the room was silent, filled with reflection and emotion, before erupting into heartfelt applause. She felt humbled and grateful, knowing that her music had reached people in a deeply personal way. Beyond public performances, she also focused on nurturing the next generation of musicians. She held small workshops and masterclasses, teaching young students the importance of emotion, authenticity, and courage in music. She encouraged them to explore their own voices, to trust their instincts, and to embrace vulnerability as part of the artistic process. Watching these students flourish reminded her of her own journey, the moments of doubt, and the first performance that had changed everything. It reinforced her belief that music was not only a personal journey, but a shared one, with the power to connect and inspire across generations. Amid these professional developments, she continued to explore her own compositions. Each new piece reflected a different aspect of her life: joy, sorrow, hope, reflection, and gratitude. She experimented with blending classical influences with modern interpretations, creating music that was uniquely hers. Composing became a form of meditation, a way to process experiences and emotions while crafting something that could resonate with others. These compositions often became part of her performances, allowing audiences to connect with the personal stories behind each melody. She also began recording her music, creating albums that could reach listeners beyond live performances. Each recording was approached with care and attention to detail, preserving the emotional integrity of her playing. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with listeners sharing how her music had brought them comfort, inspiration, or a sense of connection during difficult times. She realized that her journey had created ripples far beyond her immediate surroundings, and that the courage to share her gift had a lasting impact on countless lives. Despite her growing success, she remained grounded and focused on the essence of her music. She never sought fame for its own sake, understanding that the value of her art lay in its ability to move people and create shared experiences. Every performance, rehearsal, and composition was approached with sincerity and care, honoring the journey she had undertaken and the lessons she had learned along the way. She understood that true artistry required not only skill, but also empathy, vulnerability, and dedication. One day, she was invited to perform at a regional music festival alongside seasoned musicians she had admired for years. The opportunity was both thrilling and intimidating, but she embraced it as a chance to continue growing. As she took the stage, she felt a familiar flutter of nerves, but it was tempered by confidence and experience. When her fingers touched the keys, the music flowed naturally, carrying the depth of emotion, courage, and connection that had become the hallmark of her performances. The audience responded with quiet attentiveness, completely absorbed in the story she told through her playing. During the festival, she collaborated with other performers, creating duets and ensemble pieces that highlighted both her skill and her emotional expression. Each collaboration was a conversation in sound, a weaving of individual voices into a cohesive narrative. The audience was captivated, drawn into the rich tapestry of emotion and storytelling that emerged from these performances. She felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that her music could inspire, connect, and elevate others. After the festival, she reflected on how far she had come since that first night when a playful invitation had led her to the grand hall. Fear and hesitation had once held her back, but she had learned to embrace vulnerability, trust herself, and share her gift openly. Music had transformed her life, opening doors, connecting her with people, and allowing her to express emotions she could never put into words. She realized that the journey was ongoing, filled with endless opportunities to create, grow, and touch lives through sound. She continued to perform, teach, compose, and record, balancing each aspect of her musical life with care and dedication. The pianist remained a supportive friend and mentor, celebrating her successes and offering guidance when needed. Their bond, formed through music and shared experience, was a source of inspiration and encouragement, reminding her of the importance of collaboration, mentorship, and human connection. In the quiet moments between performances, she often returned to her piano alone, exploring new compositions, revisiting old pieces, and reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for every experience, from the playful invitation that had sparked her first public performance to the countless moments of growth, connection, and discovery that followed. Each note she played was infused with emotion, courage, and authenticity, a reflection of the life she had built and the impact she had on others. As her story unfolded, she realized that music was more than a talent or a profession. It was a way of life, a path to self-discovery, and a bridge to connect with others. The audience, students, collaborators, and listeners all became part of this journey, sharing in the emotions and stories conveyed through each performance. She understood that true artistry required heart, honesty, and the courage to share oneself fully. In the end, the woman had transformed from a quiet, hesitant pianist into a confident, expressive musician whose talent touched the hearts of everyone who listened. Her journey was a testament to the power of courage, vulnerability, and the human spirit. Music had given her a voice, a purpose, and a means to connect with the world. The melodies she created, whether in intimate recitals, community events, or recordings shared across distances, carried the essence of her journey, and the deep human truths she had discovered along the way. And in every note, every chord, and every performance, she left a piece of her heart, reminding everyone that courage, honesty, and passion can transform lives in ways we could never imagine.